Hi, this is James Shokum, host of Webcomics Reviews and Interviews. Today with Chris Hazelton of Misfile. So sit back, relax, and let the Geek Fest begin.
Hey, I'm Chris Hazelton. As you just said, the comic I'm most well known for is Misfile. I started many years ago in a comic called Building 12, which is no longer running. I switched to Misfile, which I'm in a weird place with right now because I actually just finished up the Misfile storyline most of you are familiar with, but I'm actually still doing it because I've moved directly on to the sequel. And in the meantime, I've also done some comics, one called Steel Wing Shattered and another called Six Gun Mage, which is also still running. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, Misfile is basically you, and I don't know if I'm going to get something wrong here, but it is basically, you've got a, how do you pronounce that guy's name? Rummy Spawn?
Rumisiel. I get that question a lot, but I've always pronounced Rumisiel.
Okay, so basically Remisiel is put in charge of a filing system on the Celestial system, and he sort of screws up.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, turns one guy into a girl and basically gets rid of a couple of years off of another woman's life. Total chronological erasure. Hilarity ensues.
Sorry, forgive any coughing here. I'm coming off a week of sick. But the way I usually, when people come and say, well, what's Misfile about? Without giving away too many details, what I usually start with is the basic premise is the entire universe is held together and defined by a set of filing cabinets in heaven. You make changes to the files, you fundamentally alter the nature of the universe forever and from the beginning of time. It basically is a giant analog computer. It rewrites everything. Everything works well for a really long time, and eventually bureaucracy and nepotism set in, as they will want to do. And the guy who ends up in charge of one of the sections of the files, he gets the job because somebody owes his brother a favor, and his dad's really important. And he just wants to sit around and drink and smoke pot all day, which is generally what he does until the events that you just described happen. So there's the basic premise. And you get your three main characters: Rumisiel, who is the angel in question. Ash, who was a boy, is now a girl. Emily, who was a Harvard-bound freshman, spent her whole high school career working up to that, and wakes up in the morning and discovers that the last 2 years of her life, all of her college admissions and everything, have been erased. And she's 2 years younger. So yeah, that's kind of your main character trio there, and the premise all wrapped up.
Okay. Where did the original idea for Misfile come from?
Well, I was working in Hollywood. I was working in feature film for a number of years, and I ended up being promoted into a job that I have no complaints about. It was a really good job working for a really great company called Beacon Pictures. But I ended up getting promoted into a position where really my only way forward was to either take a couple of steps back, switch departments, or become a lawyer. And I ended up working with really a lot of legal files. And we were delivering a couple of films all at the same time. Everyone was really under a lot of stress, and it took me a little longer than usual to find some of the files my boss was looking for. And my boss, who was a wonderful woman, but just really stressed that day, kind of snapped at me about it, and ended up storming out of the office under my breath, saying, "You know what? It's not the end of the freaking world if I misplace one of these files." And sitting in bed that night, kind of with a bout of insomnia, I got to thinking, well, what if it was sort of the end of the world if I misplaced some of these files? What if there were some real, honest-to-God consequences? And everything just sort of like exploded and bloomed from there. So,
yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating concept, especially when they start talking about some of the metaphysics of how it works and all that. So, I mean, I'd love to see somebody do a D&D magic system based off of that. So, just actually, why did you decide to wrap it up, or was it always a limited run idea?
My intention was always to give it an ending, and I've been saying for years, the story will end around the time that Ash graduates from high school. But as at that same time, the caveat was always, I have no idea how long in real time it will take me to get there. And as things moved forward, the time in the comic sort of naturally progressed, and I got to a point where I said, you know what, this is where I feel like I've always wanted to end the story. I'm going to end the story here, and I didn't want it to be one of those things that just sort of stretched on forever and kind of sort of faded away and petered out. I wanted to give it a proper ending, so I did that. I did that this year. and I'm moving on to another story in the same universe, a different place, different characters, but as it all comes together, it's going to end up connecting with the original story. Everything is going to come back sort of to the original starting event that started the original misfile, and everything will eventually connect back to Release, and Ash, and Emily, and all that. But for the time being, we're moving on just with a whole new set of characters, new setting, same inciting incident. So,
Okay, should be interesting. You also, yeah, like you said, you've had some interesting stuff. I'd love to talk about the thing, but there's no way to get too spoilery with it. But let's deal with some of the stuff that's happened. I mean, you've had some interesting characters who've had to deal with some interesting issues over the years.
Mhm.
And I do mean years. Jeez.
15 years, yeah, 15, just over 15 years, Miss Wilder.
Which is
Yeah.
all sorts of impressive, especially considering you're doing that like mostly almost every day. It seems like.
Yep, yep, 5 days a week. I think I've missed over time. Um, I think I missed 8 updates, and they were all due to natural disasters.
Hey, if you're gonna miss something, that's the way to do it. Hey, yeah, I need a day off. Can we schedule a natural disaster? Cool. Now, just how were you able to maintain that pace without getting burned out?
I just, I guess it's one of the upsides of having anxiety and OCD. It just I made it part this ritualistic part of my morning where I get up and I don't feel right moving on doing anything else in the day until I've got that stuff done. So I wake up in the morning and that's my priority, and everything else sort of comes second to that, and just sort of works for me. So
You're going to take a little bit more time between and do panels on the next one, or are you doing about the same breakneck speed?
I'm going to keep doing the same update schedule. Right now, I'm actually doing 7 days a week, just because I want there to be enough of the new storyline posted for people to really understand what it's about. I think this weekend is the last weekend I'll be doing that. I'll be moving back to 5 days a week, and on top of that, I also do 3 days a week with Six Gun Mage as well. So I'm really doing about 8 pages a week. But it's actually a step back for me because for the last couple of months, as I've been ramping up to get the new comic going, I've actually been doing both old Misfile, new Misfile, and Six Gun Mage. So I've been doing like 10, 12, sometimes 15 pages a week. So
Right. How much longer till the sequel premieres, or has it already?
it's up. Last Wednesday, the first page went up. By the end of the weekend, there'll be about 10, 12 pages up. My original intention was to have the redesign of the website go up the same day as the new comic started, and then I was going to post a whole first chapter, like 20, 30 pages. But that got held back because the person doing my site is doing a bunch of other sites too, so the site won't be revamped until October. And under the current software I'm using, I can only put up 1 page a day. So right now I'm still using the old site. I'm throwing up 1 page a day. Sometime in October, the website will flip, and then I'll put up a big chunk of pages. That happens. So.
Okay. Real briefly, what's the new Misfile look like? I mean, story wise.
New Misfile, setting wise, actually takes place in the first circle of hell. Delves a little bit more into the infernal side of the celestial filing system. But without too many spoilers, I can't get much more than that. But it deals with a couple of characters who, for reasons that are not quite clearly understood yet to the characters, were actually born in hell, and so should not really be there. Big fight over who gets them. Do they get to go to heaven? They have to stay in hell. They get and a compromise is made where basically they have all these tasks to complete, and if they complete them, they get to go to Earth. And it boils down to effectively their equivalent of graduating from high school. Otherwise, hell gets to keep them forever. And sort of and some things that come along the road to sort of mess that up.
All right. Gee, it sounds almost like you're going more of a. I want to say you're going more of a manga feel with it, but that's just because of the whole quest thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were definitely objectives on the original Misfile, don't get me wrong. It's just they were a little bit more abstract until the last couple of years. So.
Well, the like I said, the objectives are really a skeleton framework to hang the moments that happen between the objectives on. I like to think of stories as all the moments that happen between the things that you think you're trying to do. So yes, there is a clear objective here, but really, again, it's going to come down to being more character based and based on the relationships between the characters, and that whole storyline is mostly a framework to hang the relationships on. So.
And just because you're dealing with the framework, a lot of writers have an interesting thing where they basically start off doing something and then all of a sudden the characters take over.
Mm-hmm.
About where are you on that mix?
Oh, absolutely. I've had plans all the time, and a combination of things happen. One, the audience will attach to a character that I didn't, really necessarily think much about, or not be interested in a character that I was going to make fairly central. So that sometimes influences me, and more than that, I get to a point where I come to understand the character or make one change to the character that really changes their whole outlook and the way that they interact with the other characters, and that will sometimes change the direction I thought that I was going to take the character in, where the characters really do sort of take over, and it would feel like railroading them to put them into the situation or into the endings that I originally intended. But I always feel like even if you're wrong, it's important to know where you think the characters are going, because it allows you to foreshadow in a way and have some direction. So even if you're open to changing those directions, which I absolutely think you should be, I still think it's important to think you know where you're going, even if you turn out to be wrong, just for those reasons. But yeah, the characters absolutely take over and sort of change their own destinies as the story progresses, especially when it takes this this many years and this length of time to tell the story. So
yeah, we've been talking on YouTube. We've been talking about She-Hulk. Obviously her ability to break the fourth wall comes into play every so often. Mm-hmm. And it was been sort of fun about how she and Deadpool both manipulated their own stories a little bit more aggressively than other characters have. At one point, She-Hulk, for example, fires her narrator, and Deadpool actually threatens to see the author with a gun. So it's just, basically just building off the concept. It seems like characters like taking control of their own destiny at some point through various means. Geez, I'd hate to be the writer of Thanos. Yes, I want this to change, or I'm getting rid of half your family. No, but yeah, it's just interesting to see how many people change stuff based on what the characters say rather than what they say. Mm-hmm. It's almost like writers have a definite, almost a developed multi-personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So, which of course brings up, how easy is it for you to differentiate between the various characters when you actually get going? Or do you even bother?
What I try and do is find a window into the character, even if it's somebody utterly different than myself. I try and find some way or some aspect of them that relates to some aspect of me, and that's kind of my window into their head. And doing that allows me to pretty easily differentiate when I'm writing and sort of jump between characters without losing myself. So.
Okay. Cool. As far as the organization goes, how related are you to a script? Do you actually have a script, or do you just simply...
Yes, absolutely. When I started, I actually was even more organized. I would have a list of events that I wanted to happen, and then I would turn that into a script, and then I would turn that into a set of storyboards, and then I would turn that into the actual pages. I've eliminated a step there. I do sometimes jot down at the bottom of the script things that I would like to happen that I don't want to forget, but I don't chart out sort of a list of events anymore. I go straight to the script, and I try and work anywhere from a couple of pages to where I am in the art, just so I know where I'm going. And then when I sit down in the morning, I do what I call my 1 minute page, which is just I look at the script and I say, how much of this can I realistically put on one page and have the pacing work? Because that's one of those things that I feel like only comes with time. That was probably what I learned from the thing that the most about when I first started to now. Like the biggest growth is how to deal with pacing between the script and the storyboard, because I feel like that's something you can't really be taught. It's just sort of something that you have to figure out. Then I'll do what I call like I said, my 1 minute page, which is just a quick sketch of what the page is going to look like on 8.5 by 11 paper, and I'll take that over to my desk and move to. I use size B4 paper, which is about 10 by 14 inches, and that's what I'll do my actual page on, based on the little sketch that I've done.
So I'm hearing you don't have much of an outline nowadays. You just straight script.
I have a huge outline in my head. I just don't. I don't fastidiously write it down in the same way I used to.
One, next time we do, if you ever do this again, tea with lemon works, and honey, a little bit of honey. It's always a good thing, especially that little bit of antiseptic.
I'm on enough. I'm on enough antibiotics right now that if I had a leprosy or TB and didn't know it, I don't now. Okay, so I'm one.
When it comes to storyboarding, just how much fun was that? Why did you drop that? Or just too complicated, or?
I just didn't feel like I needed it anymore. It was a great tool until I sort of understood the transition from script to page a little better. So I was able to drop steps. It was just sort of a streamlining process that I didn't feel like I needed anymore.
Just because you did do storyboard plus the Hollywood background, how useful is it for basically if I was going to take a misfile and turn it into a actual movie? How useful?
Which I did a pilot TV show I did a pilot for a TV show back in 2015. I've got that too. So.
Okay, in that case, this is exactly what I'm asking about. Basically, how useful is the comic in terms of being an actual storyboard? Would you have to actually do a storyboard for the show?
I did not do a storyboard, but I did what I call a shot list. I worked very closely with my director of photography, and we discussed because I have all those panels in front of me. A lot of them aren't, shaped the same way that a movie screen is going to be. When I do the comic, I can lay things out however I want, vertically, horizontally, in any format. When I switch to a screen, I'm stuck with an aspect ratio. And so a lot of the things that I had drawn just weren't going to work the same way. Plus, we had budget and time scheduling constraints. So we sat down together and we said, what do I need to construct a coherent scene here, and what am I going to have time to do, and what's going to make what am I going to be able to do within those shots to make them dynamic, so that they're visually interesting to look at for the audience, and that's what we did. We broke it down into how many pages of script we could realistically shoot a day, and how many different shots and angles could we do in those given situations. Because I had enough money to afford my camera crew for a total of 6 days. We had to get everything done in there. So it was just paying the camera crew, I think, was like $9,000, and they were taking just a fraction of what they would normally charge to work on that project. So.
Okay, and the obligatory is how far did it get off the ground?
Oh, the whole project got done. I did it I had it crowdfunded as a Kickstarter just to sort of do a movie version.
Right.
It got done. It's out there to see if you want to see it. I think it's on Amazon if you want to look at it. I've got DVDs sitting in the warehouse here as well. But yeah, the problem is now that it got done, they make it so difficult to market anything in Hollywood unless you have an agent or a rep. And I don't.
Right.
So I dropped the ball on that. It's something that now that the series is done, I might look into more seriously. I just contacted a few of the people that I still know out in there, and one of them is actively looking for somebody who might be interested in me as a client. But it's so sort of touch and go and luck driven. I'm not counting on it. And either way, I'm happy just doing drawing at this point. So I would love to see it done as an animated series or even a live action TV series. But I'm not going to be crushed if it never happens. I'm realistic.
Right.
I've been in that business long enough to know how many series, even when the rights do get picked up, never get made. So
I could just see it'd be fun seeing. I can never pronounce the guy's name. Thomas Sangster Brody as Remicio. But and I guess the other question is, because you did do the translation from basically from strip to screen, how much of that did you have to drop? I mean, obviously
I made very few changes, and what I'm fortunate is, because my background is all in film, I wrote all the scripts to misfile in screenplay format just because it works for me mentally.
Right.
So when it became time to actually go from the comic script to the script on screen, I changed very little, and a lot of it was just because I'd grown as a writer and wanted to mess with a few things. But I was able to go back and really just pull out those same sections of script, make a couple of changes, and go with it. So
cool. If you did do an actual full series, how much of the metaphysics would you have to drop, or would you have to?
I don't think I would have to drop any of it, really. I do think stylistically I'd have to change things a little bit, but I don't think in terms of the actual story or the characters or the metaphysics of it, I would change much at all.
Okay. Yeah, well, I've noticed is that when some people go from strip to screen or try to, they've noticed that they've had to cut down a lot of the dialogue, which also cuts down a lot of the, in your case, you basically go through entire pages where you actually go through how things work.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's nice is usually with the pages on how things work, I try and work it so that it's somebody describing it to somebody else, so that when I moved that to screen, I did the same. When I had the comic, I had Remicio explaining everything, and I had little doodles in the corner, sort of showing, just accompanying his explanation. Well, when I did the film version, I had that same thing, except that it's him drawing in crayon. Those same doodles as he explains. So it all sort of was able to push it just straight over. So
cool. Yeah, it's like you've got a lot of people doing from one medium into another medium, and so it's sort of interesting to see how people translate it.
I've tried to avoid as much as possible internal dialogue or internal monologue, and that helps a lot. Like if you're going to make that transition, because it is very difficult to translate internal monologue to screen. But as long as two people are actually having a conversation and those words are supposed to be there, I think it makes it a lot easier to make that transition.
Cool. And I guess we might as well give your other projects a little bit of love. What's Six Gun Mage about?
Six Gun Mage is my steampunk fantasy western.
Sorry. That's just I just love that combination of western and steampunk.
It's a steampunk setting, but it's in a world where there was magic. I find most people, when they build a magical world, for some reason get stuck somewhere between the medieval era and the Renaissance, and the society never goes past that. My society has made it to about the mid 1800s, late 1800s in some cases. There's a lot of steam power, but things are still mixed. There's steam engines. Some of them are run. Some of them are heated, by magical elements, things like that. But mages are fairly rare. They're rarer at this point in history than they've ever been. So much so that the few remaining mages have found people who are able to. They have in their blood the ability to cast, but not enough to be mages. That's where gun mages come from. They're given basically weapons that allow them to focus their power and use them. Six Gun Mage is the Six Gun Mage is one of the characters that the series follows. So it's someone who is almost a mage but not quite, and her adventures. So
okay, sounds great. I mean, like I said, first off, you got magic, you got steampunk, you got western. So I'm like half my favorite genres right there. That you just don't see it enough. I don't think there's enough love for the western anymore.
It's not. It's never. It's got comedy in it, but it's a lot less comedic than Misfile, and so I think the audience is smaller. But I have a very loyal core audience for it. So that's been going since about 2013. So I'm almost 1,000 pages with that one.
Okay. And wait, 1,000 pages already?
For Six Gun Mage, yeah. I think I'm at 970 something.
Dang. I do not want to see the books in your room.
Oh, well, you think that's bad. Misfile ended at just short of 4,000 pages, so.
Jeez. That's like a manga library in and of itself. Now you got me doing it. And I guess we touch real quick on the business side of things. How successful have the comics proven for you?
They pay the bills. I always say if I lived in a district where I felt comfortable sending my children to public school, I'd probably be doing pretty well for myself. But because I don't, I'm left pretty broke at the end of the month. But I do get the bills paid. So
yeah, which of course puts you about a step in. How have you managed to pull that off? I mean, with most webcomics, they tend to basically do the hobby thing more than anything else. You're actually apparently making an actual business out of it.
Like I said, it helps to treat it as to make it a business. You have to treat it like a business. I've always treated it like it was my job, even before it was my main job. I made it a priority in my life. I made sure that everything. Like I said, I only missed those 8 updates because it was literally impossible for me to update. I don't treat it as a hobby. I treat it as my main source of income because it is. It has also helped that my wife also has a job to help fill in the gaps when things fall short, and it also helps that she has I get asked this question a lot: is how do you make money at your webcomic? And I say, well, I can tell you how I did it, but it's not going to help you. And I usually get pressed on that answer. I said, well, here to summarize from my experience, the best way to make sure that your comic gets out there and is noticed and makes money is to have the promotion of your webcomic be your wife's master's thesis in business school.
Okay, that's just awesome.
So like I said, that would be my suggestion, but it's not going to help you.
Yeah, obviously. Jeez. Especially when you got way too many situations where it's basically a guy doing it all by himself. So
yeah, she handles a lot of the business and the taxes because they get real complicated. I try and not put all my eggs in one basket. I've got income coming in from the comic from multiple ways, from donations, from merchandising, from Patreon, from advertisement, so that if anything starts to dry up or has a bad month, I'm not left broke. I have those other ones I can draw on while I try and fix the problem. I think that's one trap that a lot of people fall in, is they find one really good way to make their money, and then when that dries up or changes, because my God, the market has changed so many times since I started doing this. I'm one of the old guard. I've been doing this forever. People, I've watched the market and how you can make money change so many times that a lot of people have fallen in the trap of finding this one way that really works for them, and then the market changes and they got nowhere to go. So I would say diversify, find lots of different ways to make money, and hopefully they'll buffer each other out.
Yeah, it's really diversify.
I find that almost all the people, not all of, but I'd say about 90% of the people that I know that have been doing this forever and are still doing it, all started their first comic in 2002.
Yeah, going to jerk mode, you'd be pretty much the second generation of webcomickers. Mm-hmm. So this is not, of course, to say you have not. It's not just the achievement or anything. Because trust me, that's a major achievement.
Oh no, I was the first generation. We're late 90s, probably 97, 98. Were just the real pioneers, and then right after that, you get us. You get that second generation, and we were still small enough that we all still know each other. It was a small enough community that when I first started going to conventions, the most common question that I got asked at panels is, "What's a webcomic?" Like, that's how long I've been doing this. And then to explain to people what it was you would reference that first generation. You would say, well, like Penny Arcade or Mega Tokyo or one of those other things. And then that was us. Like coming in the early 2000s, it was like that next small group that really tried to. They weren't pioneers of the genre, but were pioneers of the business. Where we said, well, this is this thing that people are doing. How can we make this a job?
Right.
And then now there are a million of them out there, but it's a much wider audience. But there are also a lot more venues that have been set up to do it. We were still kind of experimenting at the time. When people ask me how to do this, the speech that I used to give and the suggestions that I used to give, none of that stuff is applicable anymore because the market's changed so much. I mean, there was no KeenSpot or KeenSpace or any of the places any of the free webcomic hosting services that existed. There were the people that were doing print on demand. That market didn't exist yet. So we kind of had to find all that stuff. And then nowadays, it's a lot easier to start up, but it's like I said, it's still a track because it's very easy to start, but it's still just as difficult to make a living at it. So kudos to all those people trying to do that now because it's hard to stand out in a field with so many people. Even though it's easier to get started, it's almost harder to get noticed because there's so many people doing it now.
Yeah, and of course it doesn't help. You've got a lot of people who aren't following up on the education aspect of it either.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not, how to put this one, basically, even though they're trying to get good at the craft, they're not actually doing the education or get better at the craft. They're not taking the writing classes or the drawing classes or anything like that. So, and it definitely shows.
My advantage there was that my mother has a master's in illustration, was a professional illustrator my whole life. So until I, got to be 6 or 7 and met other children, I thought what parents did is they got up in the morning and drew for 8 hours. So that's what my adulthood to be. So
there are worse things you can do.
I think that's where my work ethic came from in that respect. But
so, geez, we just saw a kid in the background.
Yeah, I think they're back from the pool. Evan, upstairs, come on.
So, don't worry, we're almost through, honestly. We're down to the last 15 minutes, which is always the fun part. If you did have somebody who's doing the comics nowadays, what would you suggest, or what kind of training would you suggest, or just simply go for it?
I would say go for it. I get asked that question a lot. It's like, what's the first step? There shouldn't be a first step. I think the biggest trap that people fall into when they're just starting this is saying, well, what do I need to do to be ready to do this? And the fact of the matter is you're never going to feel like you're ready to do this. I've been doing this for 15 years and I still don't feel like I'm ready to do this. Just do it because nothing is going to get you better faster than having to wake up every morning and just do the damn page. Look at the way my art changed from the beginning. I'm embarrassed to look at my early pages, even though I was really proud of them at the time. And honestly, I think that's a good thing. If you look back at your work from 15 years ago and you weren't mortified by it, then you're not growing as an artist. But what allows you to grow as your artist is that 15 years of work, So I say just sit down, put it out there. It might not be your magnum opus, but every time you do a project, you will learn, and your next project's going to be better. So
what have you learned over the last years? Obviously you've gotten a little bit better, but obviously what have you learned over the years? What have you found to make things work easier for you, that sort of thing?
I found a rhythm just to my work. When I started, my pages would take hours and hours, and now I really understand exactly what I got to do, what I got to put on the page, and I can do my pages in about each page is about 2.5 hours now from sketch all the way through to the text at the end. Usually, there are complicated pages, particularly when I've got a lot of complex machinery, because my strength is in character and emotion. So when you get to like cars or guns or buildings and architecture, that's the stuff that's going to take me longer. But for the most part, yeah, my schedule, my workflow has really become more efficient over the years. What else? Like I said, the pacing. When I come from the world of screenplay, and screenplay is designed so that every page of screenplay, it's formatted. If you read it, you can expect that a page of text is going to be about 1 minute of film. So in my head, when I started doing this, that meant that a page of screenplay was going to be a page of comic. And my God, that does not work. So figuring out how much of that page I could cram realistically and make it work onto a comic page took me really a long time to wrap my head around. And I feel like I understand that a lot better now. And just understanding how to write dialogue in a way that makes it sound natural when you read it out loud, I think is something that takes a while. And I think that's very valuable. When you read it back to yourself, and it sounds like if it sounds like something that you're reading out of a book, it's probably not right. If it sounds like something that you would actually say to somebody, you're probably good to go.
Right. How much bleed over is there from character to character over time?
What do you mean?
Basically, if you're with a person in real life, you're always going to there's always going to be certain things you're going to bleed off from that person onto you, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
How well does that apply to comic characters?
Well, it applies a lot from me to the character because, like I said, I try and base each character on an aspect of myself. So that bleed from me to them is intentional. I don't find that it goes too much the other way. Some characters do make me think, and I guess in that respect, that thought process can change some things. Maybe make me look at something from an angle I haven't considered before. But I'd say it's mostly in the other direction. It's mostly me bleeding into the characters rather than the characters bleeding into each other or to me.
Okay. Yeah, with anime, for example, you notice every once in a while that one of the characters will notice all of a sudden they're doing things in a particular style, and they realize, wait a sec, this is that goofball style, not mine. You know.
That's why, and this is true of acting as well. A lot of times it's easier to deal with a character who is not at all like you, who's radically different from you. Because when a character is similar to you, that line blurs, and sometimes you're writing you into the character, and you shouldn't be. When a character is radically different from yourself, and you can putting yourself in that character's head, you're less likely to default to you in the writing and the drawing. So it's sort of the more different the character is from you, in some ways the easier they are to write.
How often have you found yourself exploring certain aspects of yourself through your characters?
Oh, all the time. Not necessarily even in a logical or straightforward way, but just when I find myself having a character work through their problems, and it forces me to think how I would in that situation and how the character would do so differently. So it's an organic process that actually is quite common.
Okay. And how's the difference between drawing Six Gun Mage versus Misfile going?
I've done each of my comics slightly differently. Six Gun Mage is all digital shaded. I don't do any. Misfile was all pencil. The new Misfile is all the outlines are inked, but all the shading I'm still doing in pencil. Six Gun Mage is all ink lines and computer shaded. So it's a different look and it's a different process, but I think it helps to differentiate the properties. So,
which is always a good thing, especially when they've got different, for lack of a better reference, a little different magic system to them. So, how involved is the magic system for a Six Gun Mage?
I don't go into how it works so much. One of the things that has been established is in Six Gun Mage, mages are able to tap into another dimension, and the power that they use has to come from somewhere. So they sort of pull it out of there, and it's recently been revealed that because some of them have basically used this form of magic to live forever, that the diminishing returns on that each year that it spells in effect, it pulls more and more from this other dimension, and this other dimension has now become like this dark, horrible place. And that's why one of the reasons there's so few mages now is there's not very much magic left to access in this other place because it's all being sucked into these five people's lives, and that's where this war has come about. Is the people who have figured that out are now trying to take down these five people. So
right. Yeah, obviously I need to read up on the Six Gun Mage. How what's it? What's the age difference between the characters, or is there pretty much the adolescent?
Well, in this file, pretty much most of the main characters are adolescents. Even the angels that are hundreds of years old are still effectively adolescents. In Six Gun Mage, the main character is a girl named Kylie, and she starts at about 16. In the comic, she's about 18 now, and she works primarily with a small group of people. There's a slightly older woman who's in her mid to late 20s named Gwen. There's a guy that they both work with that Gwen had a previous business relationship with, and Kylie works with now, named Zeitz, who's got a whole past going on, but he's in his mid 30s. They have Gwen has effectively a maid on lease from her sister, who is in her early 20s. And then there's Nessa, who is the only character who doesn't use guns. She specializes in sort of silent techniques. She uses a crossbow and knives and all that. And she is, I've left her age ambiguous. It recently came out that she was at one point a prostitute in this other city. And that past has come out recently, but I haven't really established a proper age for her. So it's sort of late teens to mid 30s is the group there, and then they're also working with with not a friend, but my enemy's enemy is my friend sort of situation. A guy named Colonel Renault, who has been an enemy for a good deal of the series, who they're now working with, and he's in his late 60s. So.
Okay. Definitely a difference from this file.
Yep.
And I guess the fun part about this file, I guess, how easy was it for you to do the gender bending for Ash?
Sorry, what was that?
How easy was it for you to do, or how hard was it for you to do the gender bending, especially when it came to Ash?
It was very difficult for me because when I started doing this file, my father had recently come out as transgendered, and so I felt an obligation to do it in a way that was honest and respectful. And so I did a lot of research. And through the years, I have met an awful lot of other transgender people as a result of having done the comic. And as I was saying online recently, it actually changed my initial ending. One of the original endings I had for the comic, I just decided that it wasn't something I could do because knowing now what I know about transgender people, it just wasn't realistic. The ending would never have been realistic. It would not have worked. And I wanted to put an ending together that was more respectful. So that was one of the reasons that changed. So
yeah. Yeah, for what it's worth, it definitely came off a little bit different than the usual playing it solely for gags. So definitely a nice change.
I'd say the best compliment I ever got was when I stumbled across a forum where there were a bunch of transgender people discussing comics and webcomics, and this file was referred to as the only decent piece of trans literature written by a cis man. So.
Jeez,
I don't know if that's true, but I took it as a great compliment at the time. So.
Oh, it's definitely a great compliment. I mean, it's just usually whenever you see the trans thing done, it's usually played off for laughs, or there's some other miscellaneous something. It's played off either for laugh or for sexual reasons, not for.
You have to put some laugh in it because life is laugh. Like even in the worst situations, there's always some humor. So you have to find the humor in it. But I tried to do it in a way that was going to remain respectful and not play it for laughs, but still have the laughs in it to keep it lighthearted enough to read. So.
Yeah, I've been sort of, I've been looking at a lot of the transgender type characters, and going all the way back to World War II, and it's just been sort of interesting. I've actually been debating trying one or two of the public orphaned characters. So, and basically I had to go with, now I can't remember the guy's name. Basically he was in the character was in the French Resistance in World War II, and then became a criminal. And when he became a criminal, he decided to basically dress as a woman all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, of course, opposed to Madame Fatale, who's an actor who does crime as an older woman. Don't ask. World War II comics scared me a lot. But yeah, Miss File is definitely been one of the better treatments. So I honestly wish there were a little bit more transgender, transsexual comics out there.
And along the way, I got to say, I made mistakes, and people called me on it, and I tried to work on it. I tried to not push back and say, well, this, and this, because it's not, like I said, I'm not writing. I said, write what you know, and if you're not writing what you know, be willing to do a lot of research. And so I did as much research as I could, and I tried to take as much constructive criticism as I could about it, and work that in there. So, always be willing to do that.
Yeah, it seems like people who basically take the criticism, who basically roll with the punches, tend to do a lot better than people who resist them.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, here the thing with new Misfile is I feel like I'm better equipped to write it, because a lot of the old themes of original Misfile dealt with transgender issues, which, although I'm connected to, I don't experience personally. Whereas a lot of the themes of the new story of Misfile revolve around depression and anxiety, which I know loads about, and I can write from a personal level. So.
All right, and of course the obligatory. Anything else you want to say or mention?
No, just it's all free to read. Like I say, my business plan is always revolved around making money by giving away all my creative content for free. So if you want to see what we're talking about, go to misfile.com or sixgunmage.com, and you can either spell sixgunmage or just put the number. I've both websites go to the same place. And look forward. I'm looking forward to October, when the website will update, and you'll get a huge chunk of new Misfile all at once. So drop on by, take a look, and enjoy.
Yeah, and I'm definitely interested to see as a web designer what the new site's going to look like. I'm already really happy with the current site, so it has a nice.
Actually, I love the software behind the scenes on the current Misfile. I know I'm switching to a new software setup that I use, which is the same one that I use for Six Gun Mage. I actually prefer the one that I have now going with Misfile, but because of the company that I'm with, whose web space I'm using and who handles a lot of my business end, the new design is going to work with their software. So. It should look similar, but the whole site's going to function a little bit differently to make it easier to integrate with the rest of the sites.
So. Okay. One more free plug, just because I'm a nice guy.
Stop on by, buy a book or some merchandise, or just read, because just showing up and letting those ads play, helps me pay mortgage at the end of the month. So it keeps my kids in school. But thanks for having me on.
No problem.
And been a good talk.
Cool. And of course, my obligatory plug is please stop by at patreon.com/twosparrows, TWO, and see what's there. So yeah, definitely been fun talking to you. Definitely covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, when it goes up, let me know. I'll toss a link out to it. So
cool. And get better.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you.